This is Pat McDonald, your host for Vote for Vermont, where our tagline is Listening Beyond the Soundbites. We are continuing with our candidate series, and joining me tonight is Edward Gilbert Jr., who's running as an independent for the U.S. Senate. Ed, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Pat. It's a real pleasure.
We've got a lot to talk about. You're tackling a big challenge here.
Yeah, well, just to say it lightly, I guess I'm tackling a rock star from the sounds of it.
Exactly.
Everybody feels Bernie Sanders is a rock star these days.
Right. Well, he's certainly got his name recognition, that's for sure, all
that is
over
very
the
true.
place. So, but anyway, so we start always with the guests telling a little bit about themselves, and maybe you could do that.
Okay.
So you've got quite the background.
Yes, I'm a native Vermonter. I was born in Barrie City, the old hospital. A graduate of Barrytown Elementary, Spalding High School, and from Spalding High School, I went right off into the U.S. Naval Submarine Service.
Great.
I wanted to go to college, but I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And I ended up meeting Ernie Raspy.
I know
Good old
the
Ernie,
name,
yes,
right?
he was a well-known name in Central Vermont. He talked me into taking the ASVAB scores, and after seeing my results, he basically said I could do anything I wanted in the U.S. Navy.
That's great.
And I've always wanted to be in the Navy, to be honest with you, ever since I was about 3 years old. So we talked and discussed some of the programs, and I always wanted to get into the digital aspect, weapon systems, computer systems, and the school that I qualified for in Groton, Connecticut was about a little over 2 years worth of school.
Wow.
Before I would then head out to the fleet. After graduating in Groton, I received my first set of orders to the USS Hawkbill. That was home ported out of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii.
Oh, dear.
And little did I know that it was a very legendary submarine in the Pacific Fleet. A very hard-charging captain who wanted to be out at sea as much as possible. So I ended up getting qualified rather quickly. We went to Japan, Korea. We were off the coast of China when Tiananmen Square went down.
Whoa.
And he's the kind of captain that wanted to pull into Hong Kong, show the American flag. And
we're here.
Oh yeah, we were there.
Yeah.
And it was some of the historical events that I had the opportunity to be around in the submarine service were pretty phenomenal.
Did you mention diving before when we were?
I'm coming up to the diving part.
Okay, because you couldn't pay me to do that.
Well,
I'm fascinated by it, but.
Well, if you had the opportunity to work with some of the U.S. Navy divers and some of the SEALs that train you.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I agree, it's definitely a little more. It's a hard-charging group.
Right.
You had to pay attention. If you weren't paying attention, they would remind you of the many things that could kill you.
Like you could die.
Exactly.
Exactly.
So after I qualified on the Hawkbill, we were then scheduled for a complete systems overhaul and a complete nuclear changeout in Mare Island, just off the Vallejo, California. It's up in the northern part of San Francisco Bay. And we went through a complete overhaul. And after a while, being in a major shipyard, we were always going through these recertifications, and up came along the first Gulf War. And I had just qualified, I was an FTG, I was a weapons expert on the Hawkbill, so I was thinking, well, one of my weapons officers asked me if I wanted to volunteer because of the first Gulf War. But of course, they didn't tell me what ship I was going to end up riding on or anything. And I said, well, does it give me an opportunity to finally utilize my skills? And they're like, yeah, you're probably going to get a chance to launch Tomahawk.
You should have been alerted there.
Well, I have to be honest with you, Pat. I was a little after all that training and qualifying. I thought, well, I might be able to finally get an opportunity to utilize my weapon systems. Well, little did I know, I accepted. It was the USS Pogey. They were heading out because of the first Gulf War, but it was off the coast of Vladivostok, Russia. Because in December of '91, if you remember, that was when the collapse of the former Soviet Union.
Right.
And it was, of course, I couldn't talk about this back in the day. We had a non-disclosure. Had to wait till that expired. Of course, my parents and everybody else would always pick on me because I was unable to, I would give them little hints. You know, when I did call from Japan and it cost my mother about $300 for the phone call.
Exactly. And you accept these charges. Well, maybe not.
Well, exactly. And poor mom, like I said, she would always remind me about this when
Yeah.
I came back. And it has, you know, as I said, it can definitely be very challenging on relationships as well
Right.
when you're in the submarine
Right.
service. But there were some major historical events going on during that time period. And I really enjoyed the submarine service.
Did you?
But I wanted to be a little more, being bottled up in a submarine with 120 men for
Yeah.
about
Right.
3 to 6 months. And my captain was a hard charger, so we were out 333 days out of 1 year.
Wow.
I was like, well, I want to go officer. I wanted to go back to school, so I started studying Russian history.
Mm-hmm.
It fit my career at the time at Chapman College. And then, of course, we started getting ready to wind down and go through the recertification process to
Yeah.
get the Hawkbill ready to go back out to sea.
Right.
So I went and rode the Pogie. They needed a FTG and a diver, so I filled both
Wow.
billets with one body. And that was a very interesting experience riding
So
the
when
Pogie.
did you get trained to be a diver? Because I'm.
That was just before, while I was in dry dock,
Oh, they.
I ended up going down, in order to keep up our certifications, our
Yeah.
captain was always sending
Oh,
off
I see.
yeah.
Okay.
So I
'Cause
had
that's
to,
got to take some training.
oh, it did. We were down there for firefighting school.
Yeah.
We were down, of course, while I was at firefighting school, they sent me to become a diver. And we covered a lot while we were
Cool.
in port.
Right.
And then when I had the opportunity to ride the Pogie, I thought I was going to get to really start utilizing.
Super.
And it was a great crew. I really enjoyed working under Captain Fry. He was another hard charger.
Sounds like a movie name.
Well, The Hunt for October it came out right around during that time. And
Yep.
it was back when the submarine service was still the silent service. Hardly
Yeah.
you'd tell anybody that you were in the submarine
Right.
service, and like,
My dad was actually an instructor at the Naval Academy for submarines.
nice.
And of course, my other uncles who saw action used to tease him all the time because all he was doing was instructing. But he was very proud of that. And
Well, we do a lot of things that we like climate change research, for example.
really,
Back in May of '80, just before I had gotten to the Hawkbill, when I was in school, they gave you an opportunity. They would throw out these billets, and depending where you ranked in class, you had the opportunity to choose your orders.
right.
Kevin Martin was a fellow Vermonter from Northfield.
Oh, cool.
I met him while I was down in Groton,
Oh, neat.
and he had returned from the fleet. So it was really nice. I ended up meeting another native
Right.
Vermonter. We probably drove our instructors almost crazy because we had a lot of fun. We'd sit right up front.
Yeah.
We were both of us were very good. And but Kevin did give me a few little hints. Listen, if you wanted to go out to the Pacific Fleet,
Yeah.
he would name off these certain
Right.
ships, and he gave me a great. He went back to the Kavala, and I went back to the Hawkbill.
Nice.
And although we thought we were going to be in the same home
Yeah,
port,
sort of missed each other.
we did. He
Yeah.
was in Mare Island. I was in Pearl Harbor.
Oh.
When we came back, he was heading back out. But it
Oh,
was
wow.
It was still
Cool.
a pretty neat experience.
So I'm just looking at the time. I want to get to
No.
that campaign of yours. So you got out of the service,
Yes.
and now what are you up to?
I got out of the service, put myself through UVM.
Oh, nice.
Then I was recruited to Fidelity Investments in Boston. That's where I had really accumulated a lot of my software and network
Right,
engineering skill
right.
set. We hit a home run for Fidelity with the Roth IRA evaluator. We
Nice.
broke a company record. It generated over $200 billion
Awesome.
in a year. It was installed in 400 investment centers.
Nice.
We had a nice website portal. And this was right in the late '98, late part of the '80s.
Yeah.
As much as I loved Fidelity, all of a sudden I get a headhunter call, and they have this small little DNA startup called Genetic Microsystems.
I don't know that.
Well, a lot of people didn't. It was the human genome.
Oh, I know that
project.
word.
Well,
Yeah,
in the,
that's exciting.
well, and I had heard about it, and of course, being in the financial, and I loved Fidelity,
Yeah.
and it was going to take an awfully nice offer for me to leave at that point in time. And they did give me a very nice offer.
Yeah, you're always in the driver's seat when the headhunter calls.
Well,
That's a good
I
thing.
try to be.
Yeah.
It's interesting. As much as they do, I got to admit now, though, I think I'm at a disadvantage, Pat. I think they're putting me in the at my age in the technology industry. They're considering
afraid
me.
You're,
Yeah,
you're
I
not
guess
catching up.
yeah, I'm no good
Yeah.
anymore.
Well, I must admit, when I look at the people, I used to work for state government for like 20 years, and all the IT people, my daughter's a project manager in IT. How do you learn the new stuff? You really have to make yourself
You
get
do.
out there and study on your own because things happen so quickly.
It is a
you know, if you
rapidly.
have a 2-year-old computer, you're like, it's older than dirt.
Well, it's good and bad in one way. When you're on a solid platform, you can stretch your technology.
Really?
I mean, like for example, when Microsoft announced that it was going to no longer support XP, and XP had a lot of backdoors issues and everything, and I
Yeah.
can understand why it got rid of a lot of their
Right.
liability, and especially in the 21st century is more of the cyberspace realm,
Yeah, right,
and cyber threats are in the news almost
right,
daily.
right.
And if I'm not always reassuring my mother that, well,
Yeah, it's all right, Mom.
your son's pretty good,
Yeah,
just, and because she used to do everything, of course she has rheumatoid arthritis,
yeah.
and now she can't write checks and use her hands as easily as she used to. And I said, well, what if we get you a tablet?
Whoa, Mom.
So, well, of course that was a first gift.
Yep.
And then just letting her play with that. And then taking away the fear that she wasn't going to break something on
Right.
there.
I'm always afraid it's gonna all disappear.
Well, and of course that did happen a couple times too. When Mom didn't realize that the screen had like a timeout thing,
Yeah.
she'd always, why is this thing always blanking out on me? But the one thing about my mother though is once she gets started, she's a little sponge as well. She wants
Yeah.
to know how it works and get right in there.
Cool.
And she went from doing everything manually to now
Good
She's-
job.
she's
Good
a
job, Mom. Good job, Mom.
it is.
Yes,
I think
All right.
Mom's done a really good job.
So back to you.
Okay.
All right. So now you've made a big decision. No, you have a company too. You have a small startup.
I do have a
company?
startup that I'm trying to get off the ground here in
Yeah,
Vermont.
and what's that about?
I have it actually hit me back when I was working at Genetic Microsystems. DNA seems to be a very unique identifier for most individuals.
Right. Right.
And rather than having a social security card issued, I would like to design what I call a DNA ID smart card.
Really?
It uniquely identifies any native-born American with a
Right.
few slight variations
Right.
of biometrics. It will create your own unique encryption layer.
Interesting. Because they've misused Social Security number over the years just a little, and
And let's face it, it's one of it's being abused either
Totally.
in identity theft right now.
Right.
We've got other Medicare fraud.
Right.
So it would really solve several issues
How
that the
clever.
government is dealing with. And yeah, it may take a little. Everybody that I've kind of bounced it off of, they're like, oh, that just sounds a little too. It sounds a little
Well,
too
it's
secure.
unique, and nobody else can.
Exactly.
Numbers you can copy.
I told them, I said, so you don't want to have your own.
That sounds fabulous.
You're your own lock and key to all of your
For
own
sure.
info, rather than trusting the government to secure it.
Right. You're it.
You're it.
I love it. I actually do. That makes a lot of sense. So you are, from a political perspective, you are running against, as you said, our little rock star, Senator Sanders.
Senator Sanders,
and that is
yes.
a big challenge. So why did you decide to jump into this challenge?
Yeah. You want the direct, honest truth?
That's what we're here for. The truth.
One, my mother said I couldn't do it.
We'll show her.
Well,
Um,
and I love my mom, but the
yeah.
same time that she told me she didn't want me going off into the submarine service,
Yeah.
it was, and I love Mom. Mom is I have both of my mom and dad. It's pretty interesting. Mom and we can go toe to toe, and then, it would sound like the house is about ready to
Yeah.
break down,
And
and
then
then
hug
we'd
and
walk
make
away,
up, yeah.
and then she wants to know what I want for dinner
Yeah,
or something.
right, right.
And I have a very good relationship with my mom. I've got more of my dad's laid back. I think that's what got me through dive school, for
Yeah, right.
example.
Well,
And
I don't think you can do that while you're drugged up, but I'd have to be drugged up.
well, I
When
know.
they put that thing over your head, that'd do it for me.
I wish that was the one thing at times with the amount of miles that we would run and have to go out for 1,000-yard swims and all
Yeah.
that fun stuff. Your body would feel like it was broken,
Right,
and you
right.
wanted a nice ibuprofen, but you couldn't have that.
Exactly. You got to
So
be
you
alert.
just had to tough it out.
Yeah. So your first reason was Mom said no. What's the other reason for running against the
Mom
Senator?
said no. I'm sitting trying to put together a design team, and I said, well, you know what? Why don't I pitch this idea on a federal level?
Right.
We've got, and I realize we've got a president that is very entrepreneurial, innovative.
And
He's
he
looking
is.
to solve problems
Yep.
rather than just keep, the same system kind of
Right,
going.
right.
So I don't know. And as much like 2016, I was helping several candidates. I wanted to get them
Yeah.
up and going, not having the fear of. I wanted to bring back some integrity, take away the fear of running for a public office, because I still feel it's a very important civic.
Yep.
If someone has that inspiration, and I realize Bernie Sanders had, like I said, but see, he's a socialist. I was off the coast of Vladivostok when the Soviet Union collapsed,
Yep.
and I've witnessed what consistently
yeah.
has collapsed across the planet.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, even he almost had my youngest son thinking that, well, I don't have to worry about anything. Dad,
Yeah, right.
Bernie's going to give me everything for free.
Exactly.
But yet he did have to earn his own scholarship to get to the
Good
University
for
of Southern
you,
Maine.
Dad. That's good.
Well, he was diagnosed with dyslexia and dysgraphia,
Ah.
and it was quite a little problem. For several grades, we'd go down, and they wanted
Yeah,
to
what's
constantly
wrong
hold
with
him
it,
back.
right?
And I would talk to him. I'm like, at age 3, he had every spider on
Yeah.
the planet memorized. How can this boy be
so-
struggling?
Right.
So I had a hard, and then of course, I was teaching at the time. Well, I was substitute teaching, and a teacher brought it up. She's like, "Have you ever had your son tested for dyslexia?"
Right. Because you just post on Facebook he's going off to college.
Yes.
So he's done something right.
Yes. Well,
That's good for him.
He struggled for many years. We met a really awesome teacher up here in Montpelier. She
Yeah.
was more of a special needs
Special
teacher,
needs, right?
and she helped him build his self-esteem.
That's great.
And it's just like any child. Once he gets rid of that fear,
Right.
then he just became this sponge,
Yeah,
and he
that's
just
good
wanted to
for
learn
him.
everything.
Well, that's good. You must be proud.
I'm very proud. He worked
That's
very
good.
hard.
That's good.
As much as me, Mom, and everybody else had helped him, he really
Right.
worked.
That's
He
great.
put in the hard work ethic to earn. I mean, he 2 years in a row Honor Society. I was very
Good for-
proud
well,
of
see,
him for
it's
that.
it's there.
And
He just reads it differently. But my
You're
daughter
right.
had a little problem with that, and once it gets in and settled in the brain somewhere, it's there. And,
Yeah,
and they
he
can
would-
use
he-
it. It's just getting it there.
that's right. When the 3s were reversed, they looked like backwards E's.
Right.
For when I was like, really, son? That's what you see? Now
Right.
it really confused me for a little
Yeah.
while. But once we got a specialist involved,
Sure.
I mean, she just took away that fear. It did take a while. It took a couple summers. His freshman and sophomore year were kind of tough. He'd have to go to school over the summer.
Yeah.
But after working with
Once
her,
he figured it out how to
yeah,
deal with it.
and
Good
then
for
after
him.
that, it just,
Good.
he just became
That's
he just
great.
did great. I'm very proud of him, obviously. I
So
don't wanna
could
stop
you talk a
talking about it.
little bit about, you are the founder, which I didn't know, that was very impressive, about the Green Mountain Republicans, which is a very active group, it seems to be anyway. We've heard a lot about it. You're always on email,
Well,
trying to educate and tell people about your favorite subject. We'll talk about that in a minute, which is carbon tax.
well,
right?
we'll start with the Green Mountain
The Green Mountain
Republicans
Board.
kind of started back.
Oh, I call it Green Mountain Board. That's something else. This is the Green Mountain Republicans.
Correct. It is kind of based off the Green Mountain Boys. It's more of it's based off of back during that period of Ethan Allen,
Right.
the Green Mountain Boys, the farmers that had to be ready. It's more of a historical political
Well, if you
page.
can get people up off their seats and active, good for you.
Well,
'Cause that is what our problem is.
Well, what was scaring me were just talking with my son was the history in the civics classes that we used to have.
That they don't teach anymore.
They don't teach it anymore.
Right.
And I was confounded by it. I'm like, really, son? So, and I would bounce off a few questions. So what are the 3 branches of government? Now, granted, he was able to, because I forced him to watch I didn't really force him to watch the History Channel, but like I said, once we got over that learning challenge,
Right.
the History Channel was one of my favorite channels
Yeah,
to always
sure.
watch. And before I knew it, me and the son were, and then of course it would generate great questions. And I was noticing, as much as, for Bernie Sanders to be able to pitch socialism as the next
And they're all
latest.
buying it,
And these poor young kids are buying into a failed system.
right?
Venezuela is a prime example. I want to be able to invent a transporter, take all of Bernie's individuals, transport them down to Venezuela.
Right.
They could be a part of the humanitarian
So
effort.
just, you might know this, if Venezuela, when they say it's going under, it's going to fail, what happens? A new government comes in, or do we help establish some kind of democracy down there?
I would
or-
hope that we, well,
Yeah,
see, right
I
now,
don't know that part of it.
the
What
present,
happens?
the present dictator,
Right, they get him out of town.
well, he's,
I hope.
like you said, the reason why it's failing is because Venezuela is still a very rich country.
Right.
It's one of the richest.
What's the rich get richer and the poor get poorer kind
Correct.
of place?
What he did is he manipulated the currency market.
Yeah,
He keeps his little military group.
right,
They get a 10-to-1 ratio in currency.
Yep.
Meanwhile, the population
Right,
is
they're
paying
starving.
anywhere from 12,000 to 1 to,
yeah.
they're estimating the inflation rate could go up to 1,000,000
Oh
to
my
1.
God.
And
The pictures of the people
I know.
in the streets is just heartbreaking.
it is heartbreaking, and it brought back a lot of the memories when I was serving in the submarine service, when you would always hear a much different story coming from the Soviet
Right?
bloc
Oh, yeah.
than what we were actually witnessing
Right.
out at sea,
Right.
bagging
Fake
and tagging.
news.
Yeah, well,
See,
there you
they even
go.
had fake news back then.
Well, it's as much as everybody gets upset with President Trump picking on certain networks that way. I have to admit, as an American, I'm seeing some of the same techniques and tactics being
Right.
used by certain media sources
For sure.
that our enemies used to use.
Right.
And it's like, I never thought I would come back home
And see it here.
and witness
Yeah.
this. This was something. I was a paper boy. I used to deliver papers.
Yeah.
I used to love delivering the Times
Yeah.
Argus.
Yeah.
And I used to love reading, and that's what kind of started my own passion
Interest,
for
right?
interest. And
Well,
'cause
back then, the Times Argus, all of the newspapers were much different than they are now.
They
had
were.
a lot of staff.
They did.
They would cover the State House, and you could really read what was going on a regular basis. Not so much anymore.
No, which is sad. And I think that's what, as much as I enjoyed designing software and
Right.
networks, because it has actually kind of shrunken the planet in a way. People are able to keep up or touch base with friends across the country
Right.
easier. But there's also bad misuses that are
Well, sure,
generating.
for sure.
We're seeing Mark
Right.
Zuckerberg
Yeah, he's
a
eating.
little too much power, a little too fast, and now, and listen, I
Thank
think
God
that-
he's walking back a few things.
yeah,
He's
well, I hope so.
Eating crow.
I think he's going to mature. I hope he's going to mature quite a bit over this.
Yeah.
After he gets called to the Congress and Senate a few more times, I think it'll
Exactly.
probably wake him up.
So does the Green Mountain Republicans, do they meet frequently? I know you've got a website that's pretty active.
It's actually a sub. I support the Vermont Republican Party
Right.
to an extent. With individuals that actually need some quick online training,
Yeah,
trying to get them up to speed quick enough to be on a competitive level
Yeah.
with whichever candidate that they're going to be facing,
Okay,
either
good.
on in the
oh, you know,
progressive or
data
the
and that
Democrats.
sort of, I mean, just how have they voted and that sort of
Yeah,
thing, right?
to help them
Yeah.
get up to speed. What I've noticed is everybody's going off of sound bites these days.
Oh, well, that's the tagline. Listening beyond the sound bites.
There you
That's all
go.
people know.
Well,
It's free. What is that?
everybody
mean?
wants to read just that first little
Right. Right?
teaser, I
Yep.
call it, in the line, and once you click down and you actually get a little deeper into
Yeah.
the
And
story.
sometimes it's completely different than the teaser.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's sad is there's a lot of. After being on a plane on 9/11, I went back into the Vermont Army National Guard over here in Norwich, the 3rd and 124th. And that was during the Afghanistan and Iraq War. And we were realizing there was a lot of social media was being used in a completely new way by some very interesting,
Interesting.
the whole Al-Qaeda groups, ISIS,
They're here.
dropped up. As
Yeah.
soon as we pulled out of that presence, it created a vacuum of power.
Huh.
And that's when, as much as I disagreed with President Obama's policies internationally, just because we were always respected. Reagan worked so hard to give
Right,
to get
respect.
back America's
Right.
respect back in the.
As opposed to his apology tour.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and as much as people and then, of course, for me, just to have a disagreement with President Obama's policies, because I'm a white European male from,
Right.
automatically I'm a racist.
Absolutely.
And I was like,
And all those other words that go along with it.
exactly.
There's a whole chain of them.
Well, I
Like,
must
what
admit,
does that mean?
I never knew what a xenophobe was.
Yeah. I actually had to look it up myself.
I did.
I'm glad somebody else
xenophobe?
was. Yeah.
What is a xenophobe? So I think and I
I know.
look
Looked
at
it up. Oh, that's me.
I'm like, that is so interesting. And then, of course, as it started to progress, I'm
Right.
like, I guess I'm going to have to get right back into my English skills and literature and start to really research some of these words.
That's a scary list.
Oh, it
Yeah.
is. And especially what I've noticed lately is, and I have a few very close Democrat friends. One who's a childhood friend from 4th grade. He's a lawyer down in D.C. He is a blue-nosed Democrat as far as you're, and my mom and dad used to be blue-nosed
Right.
Democrats. But after serving and seeing what I've seen, and then of course, like, the environment has become, you can't be in the middle anymore.
No. Oh, no. You're either
Yeah.
right or left, and that's it.
Well, see,
There's no middle.
for me, I mean, I don't want to alienate certain
And there's
friends.
no compromise either.
Well, that's the other thing. And I
Yep.
feel as much as, President Trump, he is making some great deals for us
Right.
in this present time. I think it's something that certainly needed to be addressed. I do want to see jobs coming back to America. I want to see jobs back here in Vermont.
Right.
I feel Vermont is a state that is in dire need of prosperity across several counties
Right.
here. And rather than a federal representative who's always putting up this resistance campaign while he's pitching a complete failed ideology,
Right.
I felt that it was time. I don't
Gotta
know.
do it.
I had to give it a run.
Good for
and
you.
I
Now, you
realized
told me you're going to be debating him soon. When? Do you know when that is?
I will. I'll let you know once
Oh,
I
okay,
get back.
good.
I filled out
do
the
they
surveys.
do they give you topics in advance, or they
They
just
did.
Did
I had
they?
to fill out several
Oh.
surveys, kind of, I guess, position myself.
right?
Anything that I've noticed in politics, I mean, I've certainly given them certain stances where I stand. I didn't give them all the meat and potatoes. When you're going against someone as slick as Bernie Sanders,
Right. He's got all the. He talks a lot, but when you actually listen, not much is said as to
you want to know
how,
who
why, what,
you want to know who he reminds me of, Pat?
who.
Do you remember the movie with Clint Eastwood?
We love Clint. What
Well,
movie was that?
Do you remember the salesman that wore a white suit and he was always walking around with
Sig-
this what do you call it? This elixir that would fix just
oh,
about anything.
oh. I don't remember, but I'm sure I've seen it because we don't miss
I think
Clint too often.
isn't it something Josie Wales?
Oh my God, yes. Oh.
So anyways,
okay.
when he's walking around and then Clint puts a little chewing tobacco on his suit, he asks him, "So how's it taking out stains?" Well, Bernie kind of reminds me of that snake oil salesman.
Right.
He's able to convince people that you can get a free education. I mean, like I told my son, he had to really work for that scholarship, and he even admits it. He really worked
Yep.
hard. Nothing is for free. Now, granted, even though he got a scholarship, he's still going to have to maintain that grade average to keep that scholarship.
Sure. Right.
And I must admit, I'm still paying off my undergraduate, and I'd like to finish
Yeah,
my
that's
master's at some
right.
point. But
Whoa, that's
it's
a long,
expensive.
Whoa, that's serious. Well, I know we should talk about some of the things. I understand this big agricultural bill. I know Leahy
Yes.
came out in support of it, but I haven't heard Bernie, and I heard from somebody that I think knows this, that he's not supporting the ag bill, and I hope I am totally wrong for him, because this is Vermont, and we need that ag bill.
I agree with you 100%. Of course, working with Dwayne Tucker, as I had
Right.
mentioned to you earlier, he's a hard-charging.
So now, just so people know, Dwayne is a candidate for the House of Representatives
In the Vermont State Senate for
oh,
Washington
Vermont
County.
Washington County.
Correct.
Oh, I did meet him. I know
Yes.
who he is. Very, very nice.
Tall, built like a tree.
Yes,
big
very
guy.
nice. Yep.
Yeah, of course, I wish I had more gentlemen like that when we were off in the submarine service and working with the
We
divers
don't fit
and
in those
SEALs.
submarines.
Well, I mean, yeah, he'd have a few issues, but
Yeah.
he'd be nice to have around, lugging around. We always needed one or two of the bigger
The big guys.
Exactly, but he was very passionate about the farming and the
Right.
agribusiness. And having worked up in the Northeast Kingdom, I mean, there were some beautiful farms,
Right.
But I was hearing more about auctions and
Yeah,
closures
right,
than I was
right.
about new opportunities. And we're in the 21st century, and as much as they're pitching Vermont as the
Yep.
organic state,
right,
we went from 12,000 farms down to only 746.
right.
And how
It's
is
really
that?
sad. We've just lost that cultural base of ours of what it is. But it was interesting. I had Wendy Wilton on the show. She's the director of the USDA here.
Yep.
And Wendy said that even though we've lost numbers, the technology in the farms that are left in the cows
Well,
and milk,
they've turned into-
they've actually produced more, so we don't see it in production as much. But you know, when you ride around, you love to see who we are, and
Well,
we're
that's,
farmers.
I
That's
know, the
our
countryside
history.
of Vermont.
Yeah.
And I used to joke with my son every now and then, you know, when they would start spreading the manure,
Right.
you'd always get that nice little fragrance across the
Exactly.
countryside. And
Healthy.
of course, your son or your child would like, Dad,
Ew.
what is that smell? And of
Exactly.
course, my dad used to always joke around, well, that's the perfume of Vermont.
That's right, Mother Nature.
That's right.
Cleans out the sinuses.
Yeah, it sure does. It wakes you right
Yeah.
up.
So I hope that you should ask him that if you're in a debate.
Oh, there's a
why he's
couple
not
new,
gonna
there's
sign
a
that.
couple little fun sound bites that I have
Oh, do you? Good.
specifically planned for Bernie. I do look forward to the opportunity of debating with Lawrence Zupan as well.
Right now, yes, he
He-
was
he
just
just-
elected by the Vermont
GOP nomination process, the
to
committee,
take Brooke Page's position when he
Correct.
stepped down, right?
Because Brick went and made a historical event,
Right.
winning 6 offices.
Correct.
It's kind of interesting during a midterm election cycle, we have the Democrats pitching Christine Halquist,
Right.
trying to be the first transgender
Right.
governor.
I wish they'd use the word qualified transgender governor.
Well,
I'd love to see that word qualified in there.
I agree.
Because I'd like to know about her. I mean, what can she do as governor?
Well,
and-
she's already announced that she supports the carbon taxes, which is something I am.
you, I know, don't like that.
No, we're a small rural state. 90+% of our businesses are small businesses.
Yeah.
The moment you pass carbon taxes, there's going to be a major exodus,
Right.
and there's going to be a major decline in the business model.
I told the guests we had on the other day, most state employees do not live in this area because it's too expensive. So they live out
In the countryside.
in the countryside, and they have to drive here every day, and they're not making tons of money, and,
No, they're
and
not.
that's just going to hurt them.
But what's interesting too, though, is we've seen a shift where back when IBM and a few of the defense contractors were up in the Burlington area or throughout the state of Vermont, we did have some very good paying jobs with good benefits. But now I've seen a complete
Right,
reverse.
right.
The state is the big employer.
Right?
We have a bunch of small businesses that are struggling, if not, we're dying to get some kind of research funding to take it to a next level. But my God, the amount of paperwork
Yeah,
and
I
what
don't
you have to
think
qualify.
when you say carbon tax, I don't think people realize they're all talking about gasoline, but that's also heating oil.
Yes.
That's your house
This-
in the winter.
This was after a little bit of research when I first found out about, they just said it was the carbon tax. So of course, having the key word of carbon being
Right.
used, I was like, so I dug a little deeper. And then I realized carbon taxes, plural.
That's right.
We're talking $1.02 tax on heating oil and diesel. That's on top of the present market price.
Wow.
Then we're talking the market price of gasoline plus an 89-cent gasoline tax, and then the market price of propane and natural gas plus an extra 58-cent tax.
Yeah, it's
and when you
scary.
start to tally that up, just say you use 600 gallons of heating oil,
Right.
that's an extra $612. I basically on my websites, if you go to the
Yeah, and we're
www.
going to show you a photograph of one
Right.
of the
If you go to those
graphics.
websites, I basically just kind of broke down a little calculation table
Right.
just to give Vermonters like
That's
a little
staggering.
wake-up call.
Yeah.
If you're still utilizing, heating oil, which a lot of people still are,
Right.
some, they do a combo of heating oil and wood,
Yep.
but that's still very expensive.
Yeah.
On top of, that's going to raise the cost of living
Oh yeah.
across the
For sure.
board.
Oh,
Everything's go-
restaurants, everybody.
Anything that is shipped in and out of the state of Vermont. And I'm
Now,
like,
you told me before the show you think it might hit nationally at some point.
well, what's interesting is now other states have been kicking, like California.
Oh well,
Of course, we know. Well, we always.
our model.
I know exactly. And listen, I lived out in California. It's a beautiful state. There's a difference between Northern California and Southern Californians, and they take it seriously out
Yeah.
there. And then there's a difference between the coast
Oh really? Oh,
and then
east
the
side,
farming.
west
Oh
side?
yeah,
Oh.
it's interesting how they divvy up that state.
Huh.
thank God I was I was in the military. I still claimed I was a Vermonter. It was
Good
all
for
about
you.
it
We're
was all
proud of
about quality versus quantity
Yeah.
when we were out there. But after an earthquake, the Oakland fires,
Right.
then the mudslide. I mean, that state was constantly dealing with
Yeah,
natural disasters. I liked coming back to my snow.
Exactly. And those little fault lines that are going to
Oh yeah, well,
open up and
I know
swallow you
everybody's
up.
trying to predict when that's
Yeah,
going to fall off.
exactly.
And I
Not
still
me.
listen. As much as they're pitching climate change, I'm still waiting for our beachfront property up here in Vermont. Now listen, I love our Bostonians. I love Boston. I'm a Red Sox fan. I certainly do not want to see anything happen
Right,
in that
that's
aspect.
right.
But this, it's a climate change is still a very young science, and they're only basing it off of recent history.
Right.
We've been tracking weather patterns now for quite some time. The U.S. military has done tons of research on this because this will definitely affect our national security.
For sure.
We do know that certain weather patterns and everything happen in cyclical or century type
Right.
cycles.
Right.
I think Vermont has done everything that it can for its carbon
Right.
footprint. I would love to see more of our technology being sold to China to start reducing their
Right.
carbon footprint, especially India. There's some major pollution areas across our planet where our technologies could certainly
And
be
what
sold.
we do is like a grain of sand on the beach.
Exactly.
That's the kind of impact we have.
But we have, like you said, once Hollywood takes on let's face it, they have a lot of money, a lot of power.
right.
If they can get a Bobby De Niro to stand up and start
Right.
talking about
We
it.
should worry about their slum areas. in
Well,
that place.
listen. That's another thing. California has the largest homeless population.
Yeah, it's staggering. And
It's
all
sad.
these stars with their millions of dollars are carrying on. It's like, go down to.
And then they complain about someone who's sitting out on their, or let's just say pitching a tent
yeah, right, exactly.
out off the edge of their driveway.
Yep.
They're going to make sure they call the police and have them escorted away. I mean, how is that compassionate?
That's in front of their wall. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like you said, as long as they're getting paid for whatever
Right.
campaign that they're standing up for. I mean, they're great actors. I certainly would not want them in Washington, D.C.
No, my gosh, no. Anyway, so I want to run through a couple of things. I just know how you feel about veterans, I can guess. I know the
Yeah,
answer
I'm
to
very
this
pro.
question.
Obviously, I'm very
Yeah,
pro-veteran. Yes.
Right. Second Amendment?
I am very pro-Second Amendment. I do feel we do need to secure our children, rather than constantly making it more difficult on the law-abiding.
Right.
And I'm not saying that every teacher has to have a gun in a school. A lockdown procedure is set up with every school across the state of Vermont.
Right.
They can easily have a trained, internal, very classified team.
Right.
If there was any kind of however they set up the alarming process, that internal team at least gives an opportunity
Right.
to save as many children, as many adults as possible
Right.
until the cavalry arrives.
Right.
And I was a little upset with our governor when he decided. I could understand why he reached across the aisle. It was getting a lot of national press. We're still coming off of a extreme jihadist
Right.
ideology
Right,
that was
right.
utilizing social media.
Right.
But rather than having a knee-jerk reaction of states in Florida,
Right.
Indiana, large populated
Right.
states, Vermont is still a very rural state.
And the system worked.
It does work.
Saw something, said something.
And we have some of the best well-trained police units.
We do.
Vermonters are some of the best shooters in almost
Right.
every
Green Mountain
military
Boys, there you
branch.
go.
And it's because we were all brought up
Right.
on how to respect,
That's
how
a
to
good
use.
point.
Dad wouldn't let us go out and just shoot anything.
Right.
If we shot something that we couldn't eat, well,
You didn't shoot it.
yeah, you'd
right.
have to go eat
Right,
it.
exactly. There you go. Ew.
Which is
Whoa, that'll teach
But yeah,
you.
they brought us up how to respect our environment,
Right.
how to respect.
Well, we are, I think, one of the safest.
We are. We're in the
states
top.
nation. I would have liked to have seen a discussion about school safety and what we need to do, and then somewhere down the line, if the guns came up, then have that discussion. But when you jump in and do guns, you get guns. If you jumped into school safety, maybe we'd have a different discussion and a different system.
You know, I know. And see, that's another thing I'm kind of upset with, is the fact that we can't have an open discussion.
Right, no,
It's either one way or the
yeah, you either-
highway.
Yeah, right,
And then we're getting into, this, well, say, for example, certain teachers have been teaching for a certain period of time. And I enjoyed, I got to admit, I was kind of catching the teacher's bug. I
Yeah.
enjoyed working
Well,
with
when
honor
you
roll
make a difference
students.
to kids, that's
Yeah, well,
really,
they would ask some outstanding questions, and it was just, I don't know. We're in such a politically sensitive,
oh, it's, yeah.
someone gets upset or
I'm
offended.
just hoping the pendulum is
It will.
getting to its end and it'll come
It will.
back.
The one thing I don't know, I always believe common sense it eventually settles out.
Right,
As much as the far left is attempting to threaten the president with impeachment,
right.
I mean,
Then they get Pence. Have anybody said they thought about that?
I know.
That's what I'm laughing. I'm like, he's
He's a master. You want to now listen. As much as, like you said, as much as they dislike Trump,
right,
Mike Pence is an outstanding. He is well respected in the
Right,
U.S. Senate,
right.
well respected in the Congress, and there's a reason for that.
yeah,
He worked across the aisle.
Yep.
He's as much as Nancy Pelosi brags about being a master legislator.
But
I think Mike Pence is probably
He is.
I've seen that he's just a great person.
Yep.
What a great VP to have
Yep.
as a person that was a complete outsider out of government, a
yeah,
business
and
owner.
he's done the job beautifully.
And here you got a VP that
Yeah.
is basically, he's covering his back
Right,
when it comes
right.
to the Congress and Senate.
Right.
I think it's a great team.
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
And that's what I'd love to see happen here in Vermont again. I'd like to see the team Vermont spirit get back into getting us out of
It'll
the
come.
number 49th worst state.
Yeah, this pendulum can't go. And just from a national perspective, immigration, the wall, yay or nay?
I am definitely for the wall. And the reason being is I have lived in California. I have a sister that lives out in Phoenix, Arizona. I trained out in White Sands, New Mexico. I was in Texas. Now, it's not like it was a long period of time,
Right.
but I was there long enough to hear the debates.
Right,
And I heard about the gangs,
yeah,
the drugs, the way they were being funneled in through the wall. It has been for decades we've heard that it was going to be taken care of and addressed.
right.
And for
And
decades
they have
nothing ever
done
happened.
nothing, and I really don't understand this current discussion, how they can be so, open the borders and let them come in. That's just not right.
Well,
I don't
every
think it's right.
attack that we've had on the homeland has been through one of these visa programs.
Right.
And I am not against immigration.
No, my whole family, everybody came from
My-
somewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The Chalou side came from Quebec. My dad's
you go.
side came from the Mass. We invaded north and south. We kind of met in the middle.
There you go.
And like you said, it's our fiber. It's part of
Right.
America. But there's legal, and then there's illegal.
Right.
And I'm definitely
Yes.
when you've had people go through the process.
Well, I think the process should be shortened. It should
I agree
be
with you there.
thorough, but these people go for years.
They do.
That's ridiculous, and a lot of money, I understand.
It is very expensive
That's
from what I
wrong.
heard.
That's wrong.
I agree with you there. They
So-
should certainly cut down the administrative process
Right.
here, make it a little more affordable,
Right,
and then, like you said, give them the opportunity.
Right.
It's proper vetting. They're a vital part of our country.
yeah, and we need.
We do need new blood.
Right.
There's no doubt about it. As much as, and I don't want to go into the generation gaps here, but Mom and Dad, I think, raised us in one of the best periods of Vermont's time.
Right.
There were low taxes.
Yeah,
When you're making $65 a week, you can have a house, a
Yeah.
car, and raise 2 kids.
yeah.
When
When I came here, the work ethic in this state was staggering. It
Exactly.
was so impressive. I'm like, whoa, I died and went to heaven.
Well,
And it's
everybody.
slipping big time.
Well, I guess, listen, like you said, there's very few Vermonters that are not successful outside of the state of Vermont.
Right.
They love us out there.
Right?
And like
for
you said,
us.
a lot of it is because we were raised in a farming community. You had to participate to help on the farm or whatever.
Do what Mom and Dad said. That's
Exactly.
That's another
exactly.
concept.
Exactly.
All right, so we have about 11 minutes left,
Okay.
and that's not much time to talk about all this stuff. From a national perspective, the things that the president is doing on relationship with the EU, with Iran, Israel, China. Where are your thoughts on what's happening right now?
I think he's doing it brilliantly, to be honest with you. He's taking it one negotiation process at a time. That whole bundle thing that
Yeah,
we used to do,
right.
the whole TPP thing,
Right.
we always got bundled out of the deal.
Yeah, it cost us a fortune
It
too.
did. And I mean, listen, we are a wealthy country. There's no doubt about that. But there's a few other countries that are just benefiting
Yeah.
beautifully. They don't have to spend any kind of money
Right.
on their military whatsoever. They've always relied on the United States to protect them
Right.
against these
Right.
bad players. And I think, like I said, ISIS kind of completely challenged the whole free world concept. It was utilizing a high-tech process in order to not necessarily have a massive army, but just create little infiltrators across the planet.
Right.
And once they became brainwashed into this extreme jihadist caliphate, I don't know. When you can see the down and out here in America, all of a sudden listening to that kind of,
Right.
I mean, the Quran is the Quran, okay? And I'm not trying, there are peaceful Muslims.
For sure.
But once you start using the jihadist, a caliphate, we're starting to go into that extreme portion of the Islamic faith
Right.
that a lot of people have I mean, they don't even know their own history here in Vermont, let alone their own American history. And now we're being attacked in a whole different, it is a religious realm when we're talking about the Muslim world
Right.
versus the Judeo-Christian.
Oh, okay. Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it's a very, I mean, the Great Crusades happened. A lot of people don't even know that history anymore.
Right.
We've got individuals that are trying to manipulate their history. And yes, our country did go through a civil war in the 1800s. We did have slavery at some point, but we were a young country. We learn from our mistakes,
Right,
and
right.
we actually modify and make it better.
Right.
Whereas some countries are still stuck into some,
the
like
old, the old days.
you
right?
steal, you lose your hand.
Yep. Right. Exactly.
I mean, how many?
They make it. They're not too subtle.
Yeah,
right?
well, how many kids do you think would
Yeah.
really go for that
Do you
here?
know that I just saw on Facebook that there's a movie out about Neil Armstrong landing on the moon, and the director did not allow the flag.
I just read about that before I came
I
here.
just went nutty in Facebook. I just said, this is enough.
It's enough.
I mean, I have that picture of him doing that in my head. I could draw it for you. I know exactly what it was.
Well, when I was a little kid, that's what inspired me.
Yeah.
You know, and granted, I was born in '68. Okay, that whole '60s period, Mom was a big J.F. Kennedy fan.
Oh, yes. Right. Me
Of
too.
course, you know, he was a very
Yeah, right.
you know,
Good-looking dude.
He was
is
a
what
good-looking
was.
dude. He was a Navy man on
Yeah.
top of that. Jacqueline Kennedy was a beautiful wife. They
right.
had the whole Kimmel. You know what I mean? It was
Yeah,
a beautiful
it's great.
picture. And of course, the turbulent '60s after the assassination of both JFK and Bobby Kennedy, which,
Right.
I mean, Bobby was. You want to talk about someone who wanted to be? I mean, he was an outstanding lawyer.
Yeah, right. He wanted to
And
be
anybody
higher
who wanted to
than he
become,
was.
wanted to certainly be as good as Bobby
Right.
Kennedy. I just think here we are in 2018, the 21st century, and we have individuals trying to take us backwards
Right,
over 40
right.
years.
And pretend that some things didn't happen. I go down to, I'm very big on the Civil War. I go to Gettysburg, and there's a display that they have with music and the cannon. I have been there 30 times, I swear. I cry every time I go there because it's so.
It does.
It's so powerful to me.
When you see some of the military ceremonies,
Right.
like I said, and having the opportunity to serve with just about every walk of life in the
Right.
military, you do learn that mutual respect.
Right.
I mean, you get to meet individuals from all across the country, and in certain aspects, there's individuals that are serving from different countries.
Right.
And it was, like I said, it was probably one of the best educations that I could have ever
sure, for
received.
sure.
It helped me fine-tune where I wanted to go
Right.
and put myself through college. And now I hope to, like I said,
great.
either, if I'm not elected, which I really hope I can cause a little bit of chaos and mayhem this election cycle, because it is kind of in my blood.
I think there's some things you can point out on the veterans.
Well, I
and-
hope so. I
and
think
stuff that he's,
there
done
are
or
some
not done.
there are some promises that Bernie and Leahy and Peter Welch, they keep talking about us. Boy, they use us as great sound bites from time to time. But I still don't see a VA clinic up here in Central Vermont. I still see the Central Vermont Hospital utilizing technology that is still very outdated.
Right, exactly.
And that does not make any sense to me when they're sitting here talking about the Vermont Health Connect. They were going to fix healthcare,
Not
and
so
nothing's
far.
getting done.
No, I actually met with somebody today who's works for one of the insurance companies, and I said, where are we doing? I haven't heard a thing about what they're working on. Where is it all? And the same in Washington. It's like now we're talking about the immigrants and all this stuff, but nobody's talking about healthcare.
Well,
it's like it's a dead issue because I think it's hard to solve.
Boy, did you just nail the hammer on the head there. I agree with you 100%.
We only do things that are easy, like get rid of straws. That's
Well,
that's so easy to do. Just stop serving straws.
I have to admit, the far left knows how to distract.
Exactly.
They are masters of
Exactly.
distraction. And they're certainly masters of not solving, problems either. The healthcare issue is solvable, I feel. We have some of the best technology on the planet.
For sure.
We have some of the best research facilities on the planet. We do create some of the best doctors on the planet.
Yep.
Now, another thing that needs to shorten down is that timeline of getting some of these researches, the medicines.
Right, to the people.
And
right.
I think President Trump just made it a lot easier if you were willing to, if say, for example, you are one of these cases
Yeah.
or a unique disease,
Right.
and they do have something on the shelf, and as long as you're willing to be a test case,
Yeah, you can get it.
you
Yeah.
can get it.
Right.
And I think that is one great step
Right.
in the right direction. I think, I don't know how many different kind of healthcare systems we need to have. The VA system
Well,
is a good system,
Yeah.
but it's still way too bureaucratic.
Right.
That needs to be completely.
some of the stories are pretty horrendous. I don't know how exaggerated they are, but for
Well, see, and that's
whoever's
the other thing
purpose.
too. It really depends. Let's face it, there are some great writers out there.
Yeah.
There are certainly some outstanding actors, and when it comes to getting attention,
Right. Wah,
they're
wah,
masters
wah.
at it.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And I love Vermont. I may be a little sarcastic at times about some of the policies. Both my grandfathers were hard workers. My Nana, she was the little part of the Scottish-British side that
Right.
otherwise the family was almost 100% pure French.
Oh, there you go.
But I loved my Nana. And, you want to talk about a person that, my grandfather was pretty feisty. And she certainly had to love him a lot to have 13 children.
Whoa.
So, they're a hard-working family.
Right.
Each one of them, we've got teachers, lawyers, farmers still in the family.
Good for you.
Dad put 30 years in the granite industry. As much as my father didn't get to complete high school,
Yeah.
I do not know anybody who can, I'm trying to think the exact science. Is it geology is the study of stone?
Yep.
Okay. My father knows more about granite and certain,
Really?
whether it's, he has a
Talk
degree in
about
my mind, yes.
Talk about China.
Well, exactly.
And the impact they've had on our
Well,
planet.
see, they undercut us all
Yeah.
the time.
Well, they
I
have
mean,
imperfect stones and they sell them cheaper.
exactly, and even their mining process.
Yep.
Watching my dad go through that process in
Right.
the 80s, and then when I went off into the military, and when I came back, it was a complete change.
Yeah.
Barry Montpelier had several successful sheds, and the granite industry was.
They spend a lot of their time now fixing the monuments from China. That's where they make a lot of their money,
Well,
is fixing them. So.
And I hope I still think there can be a rebirth in the 21st century for that whole industry.
Yeah.
They're taking some of those old pile stones now, and they're crushing them up, and
Yep.
that's becoming the new waterways,
Yes,
breakways.
exactly. They've seen the trains going through here.
Exactly.
With all the stones. That's
there's
great.
there's opportunity creeping back in the
Yep.
area, and I think this is the time is now.
That's great.
If we had someone who on the federal level was willing to attract the funding to get our infrastructure back up,
Yep.
get Vermont into the 21st century rather than dragging our feet.
Yeah, because all of them have been there for so long.
They have.
They probably don't. I don't know how much they connect. I'm watching the time because I'd like to give you the time that's left. It's about a little less than 2 minutes to
Okay.
talk about that stump speech of yours that tells people who you are and what you want to do for us.
Well,
Because you love Vermont.
I do. I'm a native Vermonter. I still feel that Vermont it's always been an outstanding producer of high quality products. We can certainly sell them not only locally,
Right,
nationally,
right.
and internationally now. It brings It brings all 14 counties an equal opportunity to a whole new marketplace.
Right.
And each one of the 14 counties, or each one of the 14 counties has
Right.
something very unique about them
That's true.
that can be taken not just locally, but nationally, and
Right.
now on an international scale. They've invested a lot of money in all of our ski resorts to turn them into four-season resorts.
Right.
If they want to attract the visitors, we got to stop being in the top
Yeah.
tier of
Or
most
the
taxed
bottom,
states in the
whichever,
country.
yeah.
We bring this down into the 20s. We're down number 49, where we used to be up in the 20s. We
Right.
bring this back up in the 20s. We give at least a decade to a decade and a half for Vermont companies to get some tax breaks. They will be able to start hiring Vermonters, creating more jobs with good benefits rather than working 2 to 3 part-time jobs without benefits.
Good for you. That's great.
Well-
Because every that you were talking about, every survey, if it's bad, we're at the top. And bad being on the bottom.
I
Either
know.
way, it's like the most unfriendly states for business. What is that?
Well, I mean, we are one of the most taxed.
Right.
And when you're a small business and you've got to deal, like you said, as much as I want to hire on people, I have to,
Right.
like I just walked around here in Montpelier just to take a look at a few of the spots to rent.
Right.
$4,000 a month for rent.
Whoa.
I mean, that's, yeah, you got to really, and listen, this is when I wish I had, Donald Trump's father.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, give me $1
Exactly.
million.
Yeah, right, I'll fix it.
I guarantee you, after working at Fidelity Investments, I can turn it into a very
That's good.
successful business
Well,
model.
Ed, we have run out of time. It has been an absolute pleasure to meet you.
Pat, it's been an honor.
This
Thank
has
you
been
very much.
nice. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week. And in the meantime, keep listening beyond the sound bites.